Hello everyone, kindly hit the subscribe button on your screen and let me know where you're watching from. The smell of smoke never really leaves you. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your memories, especially when those memories are of pulling someone from the clutches of death itself. I still remember the heat of the flames licking at my back as I carried her limp body down 3 flights of crumbling stairs, my lungs burning with each desperate breath. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. One wrong turn on my way home, one detour because of road construction, and suddenly I was driving past an apartment building engulfed in angry orange flames reaching toward the midnight sky. Some decisions in life don't feel like decisions at all. Seeing that inferno, hearing the screams, there was no choice to make. I just moved. Someone's still up there. 3rd floor. A frantic woman in a bathrobe grabbed my arm, her eyes wild with panic. My neighbor, she hasn't come down. The firefighters hadn't arrived yet. Police were trying to establish a perimeter. And something in me just snapped into place, like a key finding its lock. I pulled my jacket over my face and ran toward the building while everyone else was running away. The heat hit me like a physical force. Sweat immediately beaded on my skin as I took the stairs 2 at a time, choking on the thickening smoke. The 3rd floor hallway was nearly impassable, flames eating through one wall entirely. I called out, hearing nothing but the roar of the fire in response. Then, as I neared the end of the hall, a faint cough. She was unconscious when I found her, crumpled beside her bed like she'd tried to escape but the smoke had overwhelmed her too quickly. I couldn't see her face clearly through the haze, just the dark curtain of her hair and the pale blue of her nightgown. There wasn't time to look closer. I wrapped her in the damp sheet from her bathroom and hoisted her over my shoulder. The journey down felt eternal. Twice I nearly lost my footing as sections of stairwell gave way. My eyes streamed with tears from the smoke, my throat raw. When we finally burst through the front entrance, oxygen rushed into my lungs like a blessing. Emergency responders swarmed us immediately, taking her from my arms, strapping an oxygen mask to my face as I collapsed onto the pavement. You saved her life, a paramedic told me later, after they treated my burns and smoke inhalation. Another minute in there. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I never saw her face clearly. Never got her name. In the chaos of that night, the ambulances, the fire trucks, the displaced residents huddled in shock blankets, we were separated. I was taken to the hospital for observation, and by morning, I was discharged with bandaged hands and a prescription for the pain. The newspaper ran a small story, local hero rescues woman from blaze. No names. No photos. Just another human interest footnote in a city of 8 million stories. Life resumed its normal rhythm. I returned to my job at the tech firm, applied ointment to my healing burns, and tried not to flinch when someone lit a cigarette near me. The nightmares came predictably, dreams of being trapped, of flames closing in, of reaching for someone I couldn't quite grasp. My therapist called it a normal trauma response. I called it the price of being in the wrong place at the right time. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the reception area of Horizon Dynamics, sweating for entirely different reasons. After 5 years at my current company, I was finally reaching for something bigger, a senior development position that could change the trajectory of my career. My palms were clammy as I reviewed my portfolio one last time on my tablet. The receptionist smiled encouragingly. "They're ready for you now, Mr. Chen," she said, gesturing toward the frosted glass doors. I straightened my tie, wincing slightly as the fabric brushed against the still tender skin of my hands. The conference room was bright, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. 3 people sat at the polished table, 2 men in crisp suits and a woman whose back was to me as she studied something on her laptop. James Chen, the older man, stood, extending his hand. "I'm Richard Dawson, CTO. This is Eric Porter, our technical director." The second man nodded, his expression professionally neutral as he assessed me. "And our VP of Operations, who will be overseeing this department." Richard gestured to the woman, who turned in her chair to face me. Time stopped. My breath caught in my throat as our eyes met. Her face, now clean of soot and illuminated by daylight instead of flames, was hauntingly familiar. The dark cascade of hair, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the small scar near her right temple that I now realized must have happened during the fire. Recognition flashed across her face too, confusion, disbelief, and something else I couldn't name. "Sophia Lin," she said, her voice perfectly steady despite the shock I could see rippling beneath her composed exterior. She extended her hand, and I noticed the fresh pink scars on her wrist that matched my own. "We've met before, haven't we, Mr. Chen? The universe has a strange way of bringing people together. Sometimes it uses flames." Her hand was cool and firm in mine, a stark contrast to the last time I'd touched her, when her skin had been hot with proximity to death, her fingers limp and unresponsive. Now her grip was strong, professional, but I felt the slightest tremor pass between us. A secret current of recognition. "I don't believe Richard began, looking between us with confusion. "Mr. Chen and I have crossed paths before," Sophia interrupted smoothly, her dark eyes never leaving mine. "Though under rather extraordinary circumstances." The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening with unspoken words. I cleared my throat, trying to regain my composure. This was still a job interview, possibly the most important of my career, and I couldn't afford to lose focus, no matter how surreal the situation. "Please, sit down," she gestured to the empty chair across from her. As I took my seat, I noticed her studying my bandaged hands, the healing burn on my forearm where my sleeve had caught fire that night. The interview proceeded with an unsettling duality. On the surface, everything was normal: technical questions, portfolio review, discussions about development methodology and project management. Richard and Eric conducted most of the questioning, professional and thorough. But beneath this conventional exchange ran a powerful undercurrent, an awareness that pulsed between Sophia and me like an electrical charge. Occasionally, when the others were reviewing my work samples, I'd catch her watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Not with discomfort, but with something else, something I couldn't name. Recognition? Gratitude? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it wasn't the typical evaluative gaze of a potential employer. "Your work on the Meridian project is impressive," Richard commented, scrolling through my portfolio. "Especially the user interface solutions for accessibility." "Thank you," I responded, forcing myself to focus. I believe technology should serve everyone, not just those who fit a narrow user profile. "And what would you say was your greatest challenge on that project?" Sophia asked suddenly, her first direct question of the interview. I met her gaze, and for a moment, I was back in that burning hallway, lungs screaming for air, vision blurring as I searched for a way out. Navigating the unexpected, I answered, the words carrying more weight than my interviews could possibly understand. "Finding a path forward when all the usual routes are blocked." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "And how did you manage that?" "Sometimes you have to run toward the fire instead of away from it." Eric looked up from his notes, brow furrowed in confusion, but Sophia nodded slowly, understanding the layered meaning of my words. "Bold approach," she said quietly. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. By the time we finished, my shirt was sticking to my back with nervous sweat, but I felt I'd acquitted myself well despite the surreal circumstances. Richard stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "Thank you for coming in today, James. We'll be in touch very soon. Sophia, would you mind showing Mr. Chen out? I need to prep for the next candidate." Before I could process what was happening, I was walking down a quiet corridor beside the woman whose life I had saved 3 weeks earlier. Neither of us spoke until we reached a small, empty break room, well away from the conference area. "I thought you were a hallucination," she said abruptly, turning to face me. "When I woke up in the hospital, I remembered someone carrying me, but I assumed it was a firefighter. Then I saw that tiny newspaper article, no names, just local hero, and I had these fragmented memories of a voice telling me to hold on, of someone wrapping me in something wet." She trailed off, her composure cracking slightly. Up close, I could see the faint pink line near her hairline where she must have been cut during the escape, already healing but still visible. "I never thought I'd find you," I admitted. Especially not like this. I looked for you, she confessed, surprising me. Asked at the hospital, called the fire department. No one seemed to know who you were. Just some good Samaritan who disappeared into the night. I didn't do it to be recognized, I said, suddenly uncomfortable with her scrutiny. Why did you do it? Her question was direct, piercing. I considered my answer carefully. Because there wasn't a choice. Not really. She studied me for a long moment, as if seeing beyond my rehearsed interview persona to something deeper. I lost everything in that fire. My home, my possessions, photos of my parents who passed years ago, everything except my life. Her voice remained steady, but I could hear the effort it cost her. That's quite a debt to owe someone I've just met professionally. You don't owe me anything, I said quickly. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. She glanced at her watch. I should get back. The hiring committee will make a decision by tomorrow. Her professional mask slipped back into place, though her eyes remained troubled. Regardless of the outcome, I'd like to thank you properly. Perhaps coffee. Before I could answer, the door to the break room opened, and Eric appeared. Sophia, Richard's looking for you. We need to review the Westlake presentation before the board meeting. She nodded briskly. I'll be right there. Turning back to me, she slipped a business card into my hand. For whatever happens next, she said quietly. As I left the building and stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight, I examined her card. Below her printed contact information, she had hastily scrawled something by hand. Some debts can never be repaid, but I'd like to try. Call me either way. I stood there on the sidewalk, crowds flowing around me like water around a stone, wondering what twist of fate had brought us back together, and what it would mean for both of us. The card felt impossibly heavy in my hand, heavier than the woman I'd carried from the flames, heavier than the choice I'd made that night. Sometimes saving a life is the easy part. It's what comes after that gets complicated. Before I continue, kindly hit the subscribe button. I didn't call her that night. Or the next morning. I stared at her card until I had memorized every detail, the embossed Horizon Dynamics logo, the precise spacing of her contact information, the slight pressure indentations from her hastily scrawled note. But I couldn't bring myself to dial. What would I say? How could we possibly navigate this unprecedented situation? The call from Horizon Dynamics came at 2:17 p.m. the following day. James? This is Richard Dawson. I'm pleased to inform you that we'd like to offer you the senior development position. My stomach dropped, a strange reaction to news I should have been celebrating. Thank you, sir. I'm honored. Your experience and portfolio were impressive, and your interview sealed it. We're offering a starting salary of $145,000 with the benefits package we discussed. Sophia was particularly adamant about your fit with our team culture. Sophia? Had she advocated for me out of genuine professional respect, or was this her way of repaying a perceived debt? The thought made me uneasy. When would you like me to start? I asked, pushing aside my conflicted feelings. Is Monday too soon? We'd like you to jump right in on the Crestfall project. After accepting the offer and completing the call, I sat in my apartment staring at Sophia's card again. My new boss. The woman I'd pulled from the flames. The lines between professional and personal, rescuer and rescued, had blurred beyond recognition. Now I had no choice but to call her. She answered on the second ring. Sophia Lynn. It's James. James Chen. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. I just got the offer. A beat of silence. Congratulations. Her tone was carefully neutral. You were the strongest candidate regardless of our prior connection. That's what I wanted to talk about, I said, pacing my small living room. This situation is complicated, she finished for me. I know. Which is why I think we should address it directly, outside of the office. Are you free tonight? There's a cafe on Westlake Avenue called the Blue Hour. 7 o'clock. 5 hours later, I pushed open the door of a small cafe tucked between an art gallery and a bookstore. The space was intimate but not crowded, with jazz playing softly in the background. Sophia sat in a corner booth, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. She'd changed from her interview suit into jeans and a simple grey sweater that somehow made her look more vulnerable than I'd seen her yet. "I ordered you a coffee," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. The barista recommended their Ethiopian roast. "Thank you." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, noticing she was staring at my healing burns again. "Does it still hurt?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes. Less each day." I paused. "How about you? Are you recovering all right?" She touched the scar near her temple absently. "Physically, yes. The doctors say I was lucky, minor burns, smoke inhalation, a small cut from falling debris. Emotionally." She trailed off, looking out the window at the darkening sky. "I lost everything I owned. 15 years in that apartment, reduced to ashes." "I'm sorry," I said, feeling the inadequacy of those words. "Don't be. You saved what matters." Her eyes met mine with unexpected intensity. "The fire investigator came to see me in the hospital. It started in the apartment below mine, faulty wiring. But do you want to know the strangest part?" She leaned forward slightly. "I shouldn't have been there that night." "What do you mean?" "I was supposed to be in Chicago for a conference. My flight got cancelled at the last minute due to weather. If I'd been on that plane..." She shook her head. "And you said you took a wrong turn that night." "Road construction. My usual route was blocked. Something passed between us, a recognition of the fragile threads of coincidence that had brought us together. I believe there's a reason for it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For all of it. You finding me. Me interviewing you. This," she gestured between us, "whatever this is becoming." My heart quickened. "And what is this becoming, Sophia?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed insistently on the table. She glanced at it with a frown. "I'm sorry, it's Eric. I need to take this." She stepped outside to answer, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the lingering question hanging in the air. Through the window, I could see her pacing on the sidewalk, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When she returned, her professional mask had slipped back into place. "There's been a security breach at the office. Someone accessed the server room after hours." She was already gathering her things. "I need to go in." "I'll come with you," I offered, surprising myself. "If it's a technical issue?" "You don't officially start until Monday," she reminded me. "Consider this overtime in advance." 20 minutes later, we arrived at the Horizon Dynamics building. The night security guard recognized Sophia and waved us through. The offices were eerily quiet, emergency lights casting long shadows across the empty workspaces. Eric met us in the corridor outside the server room, his face drawn with concern. "The system logged an unauthorized entry at 6:42 p.m., he explained, leading us toward the secure area. "The strange thing is, whoever it was used a valid employee access code." "An inside job?" I asked. "That's what we need to find out," Sophia replied grimly. "The Crestfall project files were accessed, the same project you'll be working on, James." As Eric unlocked the server room door, a chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the building's air conditioning. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. My unexpected hiring, the breach happening the very day I accepted the position. The door swung open, revealing banks of humming servers, and something else. A small device attached to one of the main data towers, blinking with a steady red light. "That shouldn't be there," Eric said, reaching toward it. "Don't touch it." I grabbed his wrist, recognition flooding through me. "That's a data skimmer. And it's still transmitting." Sophia's eyes widened, darting between me and the device. "How do you know that?" Before I could answer, the lights in the server room went out, plunging us into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, casting everything in an eerie red glow. And that's when I saw it, a message appearing on one of the monitor screens. "Welcome to Horizon, James Chen. We've been expecting you." I felt Sophia tense beside me as we stared at the words. "James," she whispered, "what's going on?" The night I saved her from the fire suddenly seemed like the simple part of our story. Now we were standing at the edge of something much darker, and I was no longer certain which of us needed saving. The message on the screen disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving us staring at a blank monitor in the pulsing red emergency light. Sophia's hand found my arm, her fingers digging into my sleeve. "James!" Her voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "Who are they? And why do they know you're here?" Eric was already on his phone, calling security. I moved toward the data skimmer, careful not to touch it. "We need to isolate this server immediately," I said, examining the device without disturbing it. "Shut down external connections before whoever planted this can access anything else." "How do you know so much about this?" Sophia asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. I hesitated, the weight of my past pressing down on me. "Because I used to build them." The silence that followed was thick with tension. "Before I went into software development, I worked in cybersecurity for the Department of Defense," I explained, watching her expression shift from suspicion to confusion. "My specialty was penetration testing, finding vulnerabilities before the real hackers could. That's how I recognize this model. It's military grade, not something you'd find on the black market." Eric ended his call and turned to us. "Security is doing a sweep of the building. IT is on their way." "We can't wait for them," I said, moving to a terminal. "May I?" Sophia nodded hesitantly, and I began typing, fingers flying across the keyboard as I initiated emergency protocols to isolate the affected server. "The firewall's been compromised," I muttered, digging deeper into the system. "They've created a backdoor, very sophisticated. Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing." "What are they after?" Eric asked, peering over my shoulder. "The Crestfall project files were accessed," I said, checking the logs, "but that might just be a diversion." "They also—" I stopped, blood running cold. "They accessed personnel files. Specifically, the new hire documentation." "My documentation?" Sophia and Eric exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. "You think this is about me?" I said flatly. It wasn't a question. "I think it's a hell of a coincidence," Eric replied, his earlier friendliness evaporating. "We hire you, and the same day, someone breaks in and accesses your files, then leaves you a personal welcome message." "I just found out I got the job today," I countered. "How could I have orchestrated this?" "An accomplice," he suggested. "That's enough, Eric," Sophia cut in. "Let's not jump to conclusions." But I could see the doubt in her eyes too. The same woman who hours ago had spoken of destiny and connections now looked at me with guarded suspicion. The IT team arrived, and I stepped back to let them take over. As they worked to secure the system and remove the skimmer, Sophia pulled me into an empty conference room, closing the door behind us. "I need to know the truth," she said, arms crossed over her chest. "All of it. Right now." "I haven't lied to you," I insisted. "But you haven't told me everything." Her eyes searched mine. "Why didn't you mention your DoD background in your interview?" "Because it was classified work, and it's not relevant to software development. I signed non-disclosure agreements." "And the fire? Was that a coincidence too? You just happened to be driving by." The question hit me like a physical blow. "You think I started the fire? To what end? So I could heroically rescue you and, what? Get a job at your company months later?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "No. That's not," she ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "None of this makes sense. Why would someone target you? Or us?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was Richard Dawson. She put him on speaker. Sophia, what the hell is going on? I just got alerted about a security breach. We're handling it, Richard. Eric is with the IT team now. And the new hire? Chen? I just got a very strange call about him. My blood froze. Sophia's eyes locked with mine. What kind of call? She asked carefully. Someone claiming to be from the FBI, asking if we'd hired him. Said it was urgent they speak with him. Richard paused. Is he involved in this somehow? He's here with me now, Sophia replied. And I don't think. A sharp knock on the conference room door interrupted her. A security guard opened it without waiting for a response. Ms. Lin? There are 2 people in the lobby asking for Mr. Chen. They say they're federal agents. Everything inside me went still. Memories crashed back, operations I'd been part of, systems I'd helped design, people I'd worked with who had access to the kind of technology currently attached to Horizon servers. Tell them we're coming down, Sophia said, ending the call with Richard. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Last chance to tell me what's really going on, James. I don't know, I said honestly. But I have suspicions. Care to share them before we meet the FBI? They're not FBI, I said with certainty. Real agents would have gone through proper channels, not called your boss and shown up unannounced. Something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but a willingness to listen. Then who are they? People who want me to think they're FBI. I moved toward the door. And the best way to find out what they want is to meet them. But we do it my way. Which is? We go down together. You stay back, observe. I'll approach them alone. If anything feels wrong, I call actual security, she finished. And if everything goes sideways? I held her gaze. Then remember I'm the guy who runs toward fires, not away from them. We took the elevator down in tense silence. As the doors opened to the lobby, Sophia touched my arm briefly. I believe you saved me for a reason, she whispered. I'm still deciding if it was a good one. 2 figures stood waiting, a man and woman in dark suits, too generic to be memorable. But I recognized the man's stance immediately. The slight forward tilt of his shoulders. The way he scanned the room in precise 3-second sweeps. He wasn't FBI. He was military intelligence. And as his eyes met mine across the lobby, I realized with absolute certainty, I knew him. And from the cold smile spreading across his face, he definitely knew me. The fire, the job, the coincidences that had brought Sophia and me together, none of it had been accidental. We had been maneuvered into place like pieces on a chessboard. And we were just beginning to understand the game. Hello, James. The man's voice carried across the lobby, smooth and familiar. It's been a while. I moved forward, positioning myself between him and Sophia. Agent Reynolds. Or are you using a different name these days? He smiled thinly. Still Reynolds. This is Agent Voss. He nodded to the woman beside him, whose hand rested a little too casually near her concealed weapon. We need to talk. About what? I've been out for 3 years. Not here, Reynolds said, glancing meaningfully at Sophia. Privately. Anything you need to say to me, you can say in front of Ms. Lin. Reynolds and Voss exchanged a look. That's actually part of the problem, Voss said, her voice clipped and professional. Ms. Lin's involvement has complicated matters significantly. Sophia stepped forward, her composure remarkable given the circumstances. My involvement in what, exactly? The Crestfall project, Reynolds replied. Or more specifically, what it's being used to conceal. The pieces suddenly clicked into place, the fire, my coincidental route that night, Sophia's cancelled flight, even my job offer at Horizon. None of it had been random. The basement, I said quietly, the realization dawning. The fire started in the apartment below Sophia's. That wasn't faulty wiring, was it? Reynolds's expression confirmed my suspicion. We had credible intelligence that an external drive containing classified DoD encryption protocols was hidden there. A foreign operative posing as a tenant was using the building as a dead drop. So you burned down an entire apartment building? Sophia's voice shook with barely controlled rage. People could have died. The operation was supposed to be controlled, Voss interjected coldly. A small, contained fire in a single unit when the building was minimally occupied. Something went wrong. Something went wrong, Sophia repeated incredulously. I lost everything I owned. 12 families lost their homes. And someone lost the drive, Reynolds added, his eyes fixed on me. We thought it was destroyed in the fire until activity pinged on one of the tracking algorithms you designed, James. Someone's using those encryption protocols. Here. In Horizon Dynamics Systems. The weight of understanding settled over me. The Crestfall project. Reynolds nodded. On the surface, it's a legitimate software development initiative. But someone's using it as cover to implement the stolen protocols into commercial security systems. Once deployed, they'd have backdoor access to every major corporation using Horizon's products. And you think I'm involved? I asked, anger rising. We know you're not, Voss said, surprising me. That's why we arranged for your job offer. We needed someone on the inside who could recognize the architecture. Someone who helped build the original. You manipulated my hiring. Sophia looked stricken. The other candidates, the interview process, it was all staged. Not entirely, Reynolds said. Chen was qualified. We just ensured his application stood out. And the fire? I demanded. Was that your way of connecting us? Some sick matchmaking scheme. The fire was an operation that went wrong, Reynolds repeated firmly. But when we realized Ms. Lin had survived and worked at our target company, and that you were the one who saved her. He shrugged. Opportunities presented themselves. Who planted the skimmer? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. Not us, Voss replied. We believe it's Eric Porter. Sophia's sharp intake of breath echoed in the quiet lobby. Eric? That's impossible. He's been with Horizon for years. 7 years, Reynolds confirmed. 3 of which he's been selling company secrets. We believe he recovered the drive from the fire. He lives 2 blocks from your old apartment building, Ms. Lin. The night of the fire, he was seen in the area. This is why you left me that message on the server, I realized. To force this confrontation. Reynolds had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. We needed to accelerate things. Porter knows we're onto him now. As if summoned by his name, the elevator doors opened, and Eric stepped out, his face hardening when he saw us grouped in the lobby. His hand moved to his jacket pocket. Eric, Sophia called, her voice remarkably steady. These agents have some questions about the server breach. He hesitated, eyes darting between us and the exit. I recognized the calculations running behind his eyes, the same ones I'd made countless times during operations. Fight or flight. He chose wrong. The gun appeared in his hand so quickly that most people wouldn't have registered the movement. But Reynolds, Voss, and I weren't most people. As Eric raised his weapon toward Sophia, the highest value target in his mind, 3 things happened simultaneously. Voss drew her weapon, Reynolds moved to shield nearby civilians, and I launched myself toward Sophia. The gunshot was deafening in the marble lobby. I felt the burn of the bullet grazing my shoulder as I tackled Sophia to the ground, covering her body with mine for the second time in our strange relationship. Voss returned fire with precision, hitting Eric in the leg. He collapsed with a cry of pain as security guards finally converged from all directions. Are you hit? I asked Sophia, my voice rough with adrenaline and fear. She shook her head, eyes wide but clear. You're bleeding, she whispered, touching my shoulder. It's just a graze, I assured her, helping her to her feet as Reynolds and Voss secured Eric. Hours later, after the code had been isolated and removed, after statements had been given and agreement signed, Sophia and I stood alone on the rooftop garden of the Horizon building. Dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "What happens now?" she asked, her shoulder brushing against mine as we leaned on the railing. "I'm not sure I still have a job offer," I said with a wry smile. "The offer stands," she replied, surprising me. "Richard agrees we need someone with your expertise. Especially now. Working for the woman whose life I saved. Twice." I shook my head at the absurdity of it all. "Don't you think that complicates things?" She turned to face me fully, the rising sun illuminating her face. The scar near her temple caught the light, a permanent reminder of our first meeting. "Life is complicated," she said softly. "Sometimes you take a wrong turn and end up exactly where you're meant to be. Sometimes a cancelled flight saves your life. And sometimes..." She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against mine. "Sometimes the person who pulls you from the fire is the same one who helps you rise from the ashes." I took her hand in mine, feeling the scars on both our palms align, matching marks from different moments of the same story. "I don't want your gratitude," I told her honestly. "Good," she replied, a genuine smile finally breaking through. "Because what I'm feeling isn't gratitude." As the city awakened below us and the warmth of the new day washed over the rooftop, I realized that sometimes running toward the fire leads you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters, a rescue, a job interview, a conspiracy, forge connections stronger than either person could have imagined. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ending is only the beginning. Thank you for joining James and Sophia on their extraordinary journey. What did you think of the final revelations? Were you surprised by Eric's betrayal or the government's involvement? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or kept you on the edge of your seat, please consider subscribing for more emotional and thrilling tales. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon.